everyone, Andrew McDevitt for NCAA Digital. The banner down below changed, and that means it's time for the postseason. The NCAA tournament, the field of 64 has been announced. Let's break it down, starting with the top left region. The number 1 overall seed, Florida State, taking on Morehead State. The ACC champs will roll over the Ohio Valley champs. Below them, the 8th seed, Texas A&M, taking on the Colorado Buffaloes. The Buffs red hot, winners of 3 in a row, including an upset over number 18, Arizona State. Give me Colorado. Number 5, Texas, taking on Lamar. The Longhorns, one of the best attacks in the country. I'm taking Misimo, Byers, and Texas. Number 4, the Wisconsin Badgers, battling the Horizon League champs, Milwaukee. I don't think Milwaukee's faced the competition Wisconsin has. Give me the Badgers. Back to the ACC for the 3 seed. It's Notre Dame taking on Valparaiso. The Irish are very dangerous. 2 of their 3 losses come to 1 seeds. Next up, a battle of the Tigers. Number 6, Memphis versus LSU. Memphis only played 1 ranked opponent. They're 18-1. LSU had 2 ranked wins. Give me the unseeded Tigers. LSU moving on. Down the bottom, 7th seed Pitt taking on Ohio State. Pitt is scary good. I think they'll roll over the Buckeyes. And lastly, in the top left region, it's Arkansas, the 2 seed, taking on Grambling State. The SWAC champs versus the SEC runner-ups. Arkansas's been quietly incredible this season. Give me the Razorbacks. Let's go to the second round of this top left quadrant. Florida State versus Colorado. The Buffs are 2-2-1 versus ranked teams. The Noles are 6-0-1. Give me Florida State. Next up, Longhorns versus Badgers. Texas averaged 3.6 goals per game outside of their 4 losses. In those L's, only 1 per game. Wisconsin's only given up 5 goals since the start of October. Give me the Badgers. Notre Dame versus LSU. The Tigers with a big upset in the first round. The Irish restore order here in round 2. Mercado and Van Zant, a force. And at the bottom, a heavyweight showdown in the second round. Give me Pitt over Arkansas. 2 teams that have been in the thick of their respective conferences, but I like Pitt's resilience. Third round, it's Florida State versus Wisconsin. The Noles have not lost all year. I don't think it starts versus the Badgers. And we have a rematch, Notre Dame versus Pitt. They tied in Pittsburgh on September 24th. I like the Panthers to upset the Fighting Irish. And lastly, with a trip to carry on the line, an ACC showdown, Florida State versus Pitt for the 3rd time this year, and the Noles keep it rolling. They will head to Cary. Down to the bottom left quadrant we go. We're going with the number 2 seed Penn State over Central Connecticut. The Nittany Lions have won at least 2 tournament games in 6 straight years. 7 seed Santa Clara taking on Arizona State. The Sun Devils have lost 4 in a row to end the year. The Broncos have only lost 4 all season. Give me Santa Clara. 6 seed St. Louis taking on Indiana. This might be the best first round matchup. 6 back-to-back A-10 championships for St. Louis. Indiana improved their win total by 9. Unfortunately for the Hoosiers, I believe their run comes to an end. Give me St. Louis. 3 seed Georgetown taking on Old Dominion. The Sun Belt champs versus the Big East champs. 4 clean sheets in their last 6 matches for the Hoyas. Give me Georgetown. 4 seed Georgia taking on Liberty. The Conference USA champs aren't quite as battle-tested as the Bulldogs. I like UGA. 5 seed Iowa versus Bucknell, an at-large bid out of the Patriot lead. The Hawkeyes won 4 straight ranked matchups. I think they keep it rolling. 8 seed Columbia out of the Ivy League versus Rutgers. The Ivy League was a war this year. I think Columbia is very well tested. They'll take down the Scarlet Knights. And the 1 seed in the bottom left region, Clemson taking on Radford. Big South champs won't be much of a match for the Tigers. Clemson will roll. Round 2 for the bottom left quadrant, Penn State versus Santa Clara. This will be a good one. Only 1 ranked matchup all year for the Broncos, though, an L to Stanford. Penn State takes this one. 3 seed Georgetown versus 6 seed St. Louis. The Billikens haven't given up a goal since September 24th, but the Hoyas won't have a problem scoring. It's Georgetown. SEC champs versus Big Ten champs. Georgia versus Iowa. Georgia expected to be here. The Hawkeyes are happy to be here. Give me the Bulldogs. Similar story down the bottom. Columbia happy to be here. Clemson expects to be here. The Tigers once again will roll. 3rd round, Penn State versus Georgetown. The Nittany Lions are battle tested. I like Coach Dombach's squad to head through. 4 seed Georgia versus 1 seed Clemson. A border war. Give me the Tigers. And in the quarterfinals, Penn State versus Clemson. In Clemson's biggest matchups of the year, they've lost 6-3 to Florida State in 2 games. In Penn State's biggest matchup of the year, they tied UNC. I'm convinced if there were 5 more minutes in that game, they would have won. Penn State's moving on to carry. Across the bracket we go. BYU, the top seed, taking on Utah State, the team that handed them their first loss. The Aggies have conceded 1 goal in their last 7 games on the road to the Mountain West title. They really turned their season around after the BYU game, but I think the Cougars get revenge. 8 seed USC taking on Grand Canyon. The Trojans 1-2-2 in their last 5 matches. The Antelopes whack champs. Grand Canyon moving on. Number 5, Michigan State taking on Ohio. The Bobcats made a run and won the MAC, but I think Michigan State's a step up in competition. Give me the Spartans. 4 seed Harvard versus Maine. An awesome New England showdown. Grab a lobster roll. The American East champs versus the Ivy League champs. The Crimson have 7 players with multiple goals. They're too much. Give me Harvard. 3 seed UNC versus Townsend. Coastal Athletic Conference champs take a step up in competition and find out about the Tar Heels. 6 seed Alabama versus Western Carolina. The Southern Conference champs played Clemson and lost 5-0 in their biggest game. The Crimson Tide expect a similar outcome. The number 7 Princeton Tigers versus Michigan. Similar seasons for these two squads. I like the Wolverines' consistent quality competition better. Give me Michigan to pull off the upset. And lastly, the 2 seed Texas Tech versus FGCU. You know it's all love for my people back in Fort Myers off back-to-back ASUN championships. But Texas Tech is a monster. Give me Ashley Williams and the Red Raiders to move on. Second round, top right, BYU versus Grand Canyon. The Antelopes run out of gas. BYU building momentum. They're through. Number 4 seed Harvard versus number 5 seed Michigan State. I know it's not a Power 5 team, but it's not an upset. Give me the Harvard Crimson to take care of the Spartans. 3 seed UNC versus 6 seed Alabama. A rematch. The Heels were in Tuscaloosa in September on the second leg of a road trip, and they tied. I think they'll get it done this go around. And the 2 seed Texas Tech taking on Michigan. Tech was at the top of the Big 12 all year. The Wolverines right in the middle of the pack of the Big 10. That's the difference. Give me Texas Tech. Third round, BYU versus Harvard. The Crimson run comes to an end. It's the Cougars through to the quarters. And down the bottom, 2-3, Texas Tech versus UNC. The Tar Heels' backline talent causes problems for the Red Raiders. Clean sheet, Heels win. Quarterfinal matchup, BYU versus UNC in Provo. The chase for 23 in 23 goes to altitude and brings back a W. UNC headed back to carry. And lastly, to the bottom right quadrant, we start with number 2 seed Stanford against Pepperdine. The Cardinal 15-0-4. 3 of those ties came on the road to ranked opponents. They're too much for Pepperdine. 7 seed South Carolina versus James Madison. The Dukes back in the tournament for the first time since 2015. The Gamecocks spoil the party. South Carolina moving on. 6 seed Mississippi State versus Providence. The Bulldogs fared well in the SEC. Providence did beat Brown, but I like Mississippi State. Speaking of Brown, they're the 3 seed and they'll battle Quinnipiac. 3 straight tourney appearances for the Bobcats. The Bears only had 2 losses, both to tournament teams. They'll move on past Quinnipiac. 4 seed Xavier versus Tennessee. Just a better year for the Musketeers over the Volunteers. And the 5 seed Nebraska versus South Dakota State. Top goal scorer in the entire country, Eleanor Dale, netted 25 goals this year. Give me the Huskers. 8 seed Gonzaga versus Idaho. The WCC champs versus the Big Sky champs. 85 miles separate these two schools. Give me the Vandals to go on the road and pull off the upset. And the number 1 seed in the bottom right region, it's UCLA versus UC Irvine. Pac-12 champs versus Big West Conference champs. I like UCLA all day. Second round, Stanford versus South Carolina. The Gamecocks sputtered down the stretch. 2 biggest games of the year they lost. Stanford's ready. I got the Cardinal moving on. Another SEC school right below, Mississippi State versus Brown. An easier draw for the Bulldogs. No offense to Brown, they're just not Stanford. Mississippi State advances. Xavier versus Nebraska, 4 versus 5. I like the Huskers in the mini upset. The Musketeers 4-2 in 1-0 games. I think that catches up to them against Nebraska. And down the bottom, Idaho versus UCLA. Fun for the Vandals while it lasted, but the Bruins win in a rout. Third round, Stanford versus Mississippi State. The Bulldogs lost to Arkansas twice in their last 3 games. I think Stanford's better than Arkansas. Give me the Cardinal. 1 versus 5, UCLA versus Nebraska. The Bruins know how to contain a top talent like Dale. Give me UCLA to close them out. And with a trip to carry on the line, a clash of the Pac-12 Titans. UCLA versus Stanford. They tied late in the year at UCLA. That helped the Bruins claim the conference crown. Stanford gets their revenge. They're heading to carry. In North Carolina, the last 4 teams standing, we start Florida State versus Penn State. Strength on strength. Penn State's back 4 is elite, but so is Florida State's attack. Give me the Noles to move to the College Cup final. And on the other side, a rematch of the 2019 College College Cup final, UNC versus Stanford. Just like before, I like the Cardinal to move on. Setting up a coast-to-coast College Cup final, Florida State versus Stanford. Both teams show up to the title game undefeated on the season, but the Noles' strength of schedule has prepared them for this moment. Give me the Florida State Seminoles to win the 2023 College Cup.